In this video, I'm going to show you how to do an automation using X's API, which is going to access the Grok LLM, allowing us to get access to all the X account posts. And this API call that we can use will scrape a lot of posts from different users. So we can do deep research really quickly now using X integrated with N8N. We're going to pull that data from X posts and send it through to Perplexity, and then we're going to process it and create a newsletter email just from doing automation. Now, you can adapt this to anything you like. Let me just quickly show you what it will produce. So I did a newsletter like this. It created this for me in the matter of a couple of clicks on a topic that I don't know anything about, and it formatted a beautiful newsletter that you could send out. Now, you could adapt this to anything you like. It could be articles or posts. I'm just going to use a newsletter in this example. But what we're going to do is we're going to build it on N8N, and this is the module here that's going to come in from Grok using X. So this is an API call that we can use now. So if we head over to Grok, I'll just show you what I'm talking about. Then we're going to build it together, and then I'm going to give you the template below this video. But in Grok, we can get an API key over here and get access to Twitter using an HTTP module in N8N, which enables us to really quickly and precisely get posts from certain usernames and handles that we might follow on X. We don't have to use scrapers or anything like that. We can get direct access from an API call, which is really quite handy. So I'll show you how powerful this can be, because it works like a charm and it works really smoothly to get access to X now. So what we're going to do is plug into the API from X. We need an account over at X, which I'll show you how to do. Once we've done that, we're going to go back to N8N. We're going to use an HTTP request module, and it's going to go out and do all the work for us. It's built to do this. So there's a specific API that we can call that X gives you access to, and it'll go and get those user handles, get their posts for us, and within a certain time frame and parameters that we can control. So it's much better than trying to scrape X using Apify or other scrapers. It's a lot cleaner result. So what it enables us to do is keep an eye on things in our niche and get content ideas from X posts. So you might be following people on X and you want to know what's happened in the last 7 days, or even longer or shorter, depends on your niche. And then you can extract all those posts and then process them down chain and create information. So what we're going to do in this automation is we're going to get that information from X. We're going to process it through an LLM, which is going to clean it up, and then it's going to create for us prompts from the information it found that we're going to send through to Perplexity, which is another LLM that can do deep research. So we get the ideas from X, we process them, we create a prompt, it passes it through to Perplexity, which does deeper research on that topic. So now we can dive into the topic that we found trending on Twitter or X, and then we can do deep research using Perplexity. And we're going to pass this through a looping process, which means what I've done here is we've got all this content that's come back from X. Right. If I open this up, you can see there's quite a lot of content that it's given us on the posts and stuff. Now, this is iterated through 3 times. No, this hasn't iterated. Sorry, this has got all the content, then we're going to iterate. But what's going to happen is this feed comes in here, we pass it to an LLM, and it creates these 3 prompts here for Perplexity. So you can see it looked at the information that was trending on X from those posts, and it creates these prompts out of it for us automatically. Then these get looped through to Perplexity, and we get deep research here on all of this content that's trending at the moment. So Perplexity will go out and find all the citations and everything going on for us. So that's a really handy little thing to do. And then we stitch it all back together up here, pass it through to an LLM that's going to take all this research, and it's going to write the content for us in the form of a newsletter and structure it beautifully with headings and subheadings and bullets. And then we just clean it up and output it in this node here. And then at the end of it, like I just showed you before, out pops a beautifully crafted newsletter on the latest trending stuff that's happening over on X from the handles that we're following. So let me show you how to put this together, and we'll get straight into it. Before we begin, if you like these videos, do me a huge favor, hit subscribe and like, and leave me a comment below. That would really help out my channel. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is just do a simple trigger from here, where we're just going to use when we click this, it's going to automate, it's going to initiate this automation. So you need an account at N8N. The link is below this video if you haven't used N8N before. Sign up and get started. Once you've got this set up, create a new blank canvas, and then we're just going to use here a manual trigger. Now, you could connect this up to different workflows. You might have information stored at Airtable, or some other way of getting their data into the workflow, you could just use a simple form, or you can just use a manual trigger. For this example, I'm just going to stick to a manual trigger. So to add that on, all you do is go over to the right-hand side and go, whoops, spelt that wrong, manual trigger, which is there. Add a trigger on like that. And then the next module is just straight into this HTTP request to get access to the information over at X. So we go HTTP module, click that module, and then I'm going to show you how to set up this module now. So the way you do this is it's really quite straightforward when you've got an account over at X, because I'll show you how to automatically populate these fields so you don't have to actually do this yourself. So just get this set up and then leave it as it is. And then we're going to head over now over to X and get an account over there. So you need to go over and get an account at their developer hub. So you need to, it's not just a normal Twitter account or X account. You need to go to the developer hub here, which is, I'm in here logged in at console.x.ai. So if you get to this page here, what you need to do is get signed up and put a little bit of credit on your account, a couple of dollars. I think the minimum is $5 they allow you to put on. So once you've done that and you've got an account set up, all you got to do is click API keys here, and then you just create an API key and copy it. Once you've done that, it's going to automatically pop up a box which is going to allow you to copy a C URL requests. And then you can just paste that into the HTTP module. But because I'm giving you the template below for N8N, you can just install it and it will automatically be there for you anyway. But what we're going to do, you can see there's different models that we can use here. We're just going to use Grok 3 for this example. And then we're going to tell it specifically what we want it to do. So if I head back over to N8N now that I got my API key, when we're setting this up here, all you have to do is leave everything set exactly the same. There's just one thing that you need to do in here is you need to go to create new credential, and in the name field, you put the word authorization with a capital A, and then in the value field, you put the word bearer with a capital B. So BEARER with a space, and then you paste your API key. So bearer, API key, and authorization. Make sure the first letter is capitalized in those words. Then you click save. That's all you need to do, and then your credentials are going to be saved with your header credentials to connect. So keep everything else set up exactly as you see it when you download and install this template. So if we go down to the body request here, what we're doing in here, now, we can dynamically map things in if you want to create an automation using Airtable. A lot of this information you might want to store in Airtable or Google Sheet and pull it in dynamically. But for this example, I won't do that just to keep it simple, but I'll show you how you would do that. So these fields here are really what we want to concentrate on, which is content. So what this is doing is it's telling the API what we want to achieve. So I've said here, find recent posts with mentions about, then I put the user handle like that. And I put 3 user handles that are in the niche that I'm tracking. So this one's a cryptocurrency niche. So I put 3 handles like this with commas separated like that related to the crypto niche in the last 7 days. Now, obviously, this is what you would dynamically change out. You're not, unless you want to use this, but you would just save this somewhere in a Google Drive, dynamically pull it in and map it. And then you can also do the same for all of these fields. If you want to change the results from 20 to 50 or 10, you can change the date range, and you can say to get citations or no citations, true or false. And then the model we're using here is Grok 3's latest model like that. So all of this can be dynamically mapped in, or you can just hard code it in to get testing and get it up and running. So once you've got the body in like that, that's all you need to do. If you click execute step like that, Grok's going to go to X for you, look through the feeds and find this information and extract it, and then it's going to give it to you here. And it said here, I've compiled recent mentions, and it gives you the whole report of what it found here. So it's done the research for us and tracked what's going on in the niche for us. And it's given citations and stuff as well. So it's a really quick pass. I can understand exactly what's happening in a niche and get research. Now, you could put this into an automation for different forms just to get research for articles or YouTube videos or shorts. It's just another way to extract information quickly and process it. So once we've got that feedback from Grok, we're going to pass it into an LLM to process it. So to do this, all we do is go over to the right and just type in basic LLM chain and add that on. You need to give it a model. Here I've used OpenAI. Again, you need an account at OpenAI for this to work. So you need to come in here and you need to set up an account. If you haven't got an account at OpenAI, it's exactly the same sort of thing we just did and I just showed you over at X. You go to there, get an account, get an API key. You need a little bit of credit on the account. Then you come back in here, add new credentials, exactly the same thing. Put your credentials in and save it. So once you've done that and you've got your account at OpenAI, choose a model that you want to run. I've got 4.1 running this. And then we're going to give it a structured output parser. So the way we do that, so I open up the model, I'll show you the prompt in a minute. Just slide this require output parser onto green. And then over on the right-hand side, you just want to choose this structured output parser module there. Add that on, and then we give it an example of how we want it to output so it keeps it nice and structured the way that we want it. So you can see I've given it the structure that I want. 3 prompts for perplexity. So it's looking at the research that's come in from X. It's now going to form prompts for perplexity based on that trending information that we found over at X. So I've done that. It output that. And then what I'm doing is just restructuring that a little bit here. So I put a code node in here. It just restructures that in a way that makes it easier for me to iterate on, because when these come out of this LLM like that, it's got this output here, so it nests the responses, which means I can't iterate on that when I pass it through a loop like the next step. So by doing that, you'll notice here it's just restructured and flattened that hierarchy out, so now I can iterate through section by section by section when I go into a loop module. So now what we want to do is loop through these. So we choose this loop over items. So I'm going to go in here and go loop over items like that. Loop over items is a really handy tool in N8N. A lot of people get confused on how to use it, but it's actually pretty straightforward. So once you click it on, well, you can just use my template, but it's good to understand what's happening. There's a done mode and a loop mode, and then the input. So we put the input there that just came from this module. That's pretty obvious. Then the bottom line is the loop. So this is where we create a looping pattern you can see here. And then when it's done, it carries on down the automation. So what we want to do from the loop, the first loop here, is we're going to add a perplexity HTTP. So this is exactly the same as we did with Grok, but now we're just tapping into perplexity instead of Grok. So perplexity can do deep research for us. So the way we do this, if we head over to perplexity, you need to go to their perplexity.com account details. Once you've got need to get signed up, get an account at Perplexity. So if you head over and get your API key, go create new API key, grab your API key, then you're going to come back and do exactly the same step as we did on the other steps. So if I look in here, set up this HTTP module, keep everything the same, exactly like I've done. But again, you need to go to the header auth like this, create new credentials, and do the same setup that we've done on the other modules and click save so that you've got your credentials saved, otherwise it won't work. That's the step that you do need to do with the templates that I'm giving you. Keep everything else the same though, and then down below here, you'll notice that this is the prompt that we're sending over in the format. So we're telling it here what we want it to do. Now here is where I've told it what to do. Now you would dynamically map this in from a prior module. I'm just going to leave it hard-coded now to show you an example, but this is the field that you could dynamically map in and change if you're doing an automation and you wanted to pass it downstream. You could tailor that content as well. So what we do need to map in here is this JSON field here from loop over items. So what I'm going to do is pass it the content here. So I'm gonna get rid of that like that, and I'm gonna give it the body here that came through like this. And you can see now it's passed through that content here of the information that we want it to do research on. Sorry, I just had to pause the video. I realized I had pinned data from a previous run, so that was why it was showing me the wrong field on the left. What you should see here is the prompt on the left-hand side here. I just had to unpin it and refresh it. But what you want to do is it's this content, which is just the prompt from the prior step. It's pretty straightforward. You drag that into the content like that. And now you can see on the right, it's actually, that content is the prompt for perplexity. So it's going to work like that. So it tells it what we want it to do, a system role, and then the actual content that we want it to produce like that. So now we can send this over automatically to Perplexity, and it will do deep research on the first topic that it found. So if I pop out of there, once it runs like that and we execute that run, you can see the deep research that it's done on that topic. It's gone and found information from all these different websites, and it's compiled a report on everything about that topic, quite a detailed report at that. Now, you can use different Perplexity models. I've used in this one a deep research model. It's called Sonar Deep Research, as you can see there. There is different Perplexity models that you can use. If we go over to Perplexity, you can see I'm over at docs.perplexity.ai. If you go to the models page here, I'm using the deep research model here. That gives you very thorough research. You can play around with just Sonar Pro. It's cheaper and faster. It's not quite as comprehensive, but it depends what you're trying to achieve with your research. So you can play around with the different Perplexity models. You don't have to use the model that I'm using in this example. But if you want to change out the model, you just swap it out in the prompt so that you've got a different model. So in here, instead of using the model, what I've got in here of Sonar Deep Research, you would just swap that out for Sonar Pro or whatever else that you want to test out. Once you've done that, Perplexity is doing the deep research. Once it outputs its research, we're going to pass that to another LLM chain that we did here and get it to write a section for an email. So it's taking the research. This LLM is tasked with, I've given it a prompt, which you can read when you download this. And I've given it examples I want it to do. And then I've given it that section from Perplexity at the bottom. You can see I've mapped in that content field here. So in the window on the right, this LLM gets all that research that we just saw from Perplexity. So it gets all this research from Perplexity. It's given an example of what we want it to do. What we're asking it to do is create a section for an email. If we're doing an email newsletter, we might have multiple sections. Each of these sections that we're looping through becomes a section in that email. So if you look at what we ended up with at the end, you can see how it's broken up into sections like this. So this is like the first section that we're working on with this LLM. Then because we're looping, then the second section gets done and then the third section. So if we head back here like this, out of there, we can see it created that section for us. That's what it's done on its output. Now what we do once that's finished, we loop back through and pull that the ending back through like that, and we loop around. I'm not going to do it twice, but that's what you do to go back to the loop. Then it's going to pull it through, do the Perplexity research for the second prompt that it got, and then so on and so forth. And then it's going to finish up that loop here. And then we're going to use an aggregate model to stitch it all together. So we just go aggregate like that. And then we're just going to stitch all this together. It's really quite straightforward. I have pinned data here, so it might be playing up a little bit from when I was testing. But essentially what it's going to do is stitch these together in one giant output here of the three sections like this. So you can see it's got the three sections here. So now that we've got our three sections written, we can get them stitched together in a final LLM here, which we're saying, here is the stitched together sections. So what we do here is, you'll notice my input here, I've used a little bit of code here to join it together. So it's not, you don't really need to know how to do that unless you want to, but we're just mapping all these items together. So this aggregate field here, we're mapping these fields together and we're joining these together like this. So you can just copy that, what will be in there for ready, and then it's going to stitch together section 1, section 2, and section 3. So it just puts these all back together again for us like this. And then we want one final clean output that we can get in a formatted email. So that's what this is doing. We give it a structured example of how we want that formatted like this into a final stitched together email. So then we can just do a little bit of code node at the end here to clean that up, and then that'll output that newsletter in the format that we wanted it. So that's really all we have to do. Now at this point, your email is written, and you could actually send that out to an email newsletter to post it, or you might want to save it to an Airtable or a Google Drive or something to get somebody to review it before posting. You might want to get images created to add images to it. But this step here is just showing you how you can start using the Grok API, which is going to go to X for us, get handles that we follow, find out what they're talking about. And then you know the hot topics. Then we do deep research on those hot topics to dive deeper and find out the nuances of what's going on in them. And we form sections and put them back together to form a newsletter. So that's how you can do a really quite straightforward automation using this Grok API. I thought it was a really handy way to get information quickly and cleanly from X, because a lot of other ways you have to use API scrapers and stuff. But this is really clean because they're giving you a backdoor entrance through the API to pull that stuff in a nice, clean, quick format for you that they allow. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, do me a huge favor, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.